This episode is brought to you by the Colfax Avenue Business Improvement District. Looking for fun that's a little less fancy and a lot more Colfax? Even during VRT construction, your favorite street is bringing the vibes, food, fun, and unforgettable events. Show your love by visiting Colfax businesses or joining this spring for the Krabby for Colfax Seafood Boil fundraiser, the first annual Apothecary Tour, Big Wigs Bar Crawl, and the Colfax Avenue Community Cleanup. Support the places that make Denver, Denver. I mean, I love the people of Colfax. My favorite guy in a bathrobe, wig, cigar. So look, maybe I'll see him there. I'd love to see him there. That's what makes Colfax Colfax. You don't know who you're going to see. Colfax is always open, always authentic, and always worth the trip. Get all the event details and sign up at colfaxav.com. That's colfaxav.com. This episode is brought to you by the Regional Air Quality Council. Happy Air Quality Awareness Week! The biggest air quality issue in our mile-high summers is something called ground-level ozone. It's created from pollutants like car exhaust. You can't see it, you can't smell it, but it is the leading cause of respiratory problems like asthma. But good news, you can help. This summer, you can take steps for better air, like switching to electric lawn equipment, upgrading your car to an EV, working from home, or just choosing to walk, bike, or scooter instead of drive. Sign up for Summer Ozone text alerts to know when it matters most. Just text Better Air CO to 21000 or visit simplestepsbetterair.org. Again, just text Better Air CO to 21000 or visit simplestepsbetterair.org. Today on CityCast Denver, former Congresswoman Yadira Caraveo opened up about her mental health issues after she lost her seat last November. But now that she's running again, the Colorado Sun published a blockbuster exposé revealing, quote, traumatizing behavior, according to 4 former aides. 2 days before that story came out, Kyle Clark had Caraveo on 9 News to discuss her mental health as she hits the campaign trail. So he's on with me today to re-examine what she said and what it means for the Democrats' effort to retake control of Congress. And just a note, there are mentions of suicide in this episode, so please listen with care. Today is Monday, May 5th. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. Kyle Clark, welcome back to CityCast Denver.
It's good to be here.
So, Kyle, you did an interview with Yadira Caraveo less than 24 hours before this Colorado Sun piece dropped, this hard-hitting expose. Did you have any idea how deep this went when you were talking to her?
I think like everybody who's around Colorado politics, I had heard a lot of the same things for a long time. I had not dedicated resources to investigating those particular claims. We had focused more on policy and that kind of thing. I had no idea the piece was coming out the next morning when I interviewed her.
That's so fascinating because we read the piece, we were talking about it, we're like, wonder what Kyle thinks. And then I Google and I'm like, oh my God, you interviewed her less than 24 hours before. So this was just already in the ether. You were trying to set this up to talk to her.
Correct. We had been working for weeks to get her on. So actually, I think the interview might have been 48 hours because it was on our air the day after that we talked to her because I talked to John Hickenlooper the same day. So I interviewed her 48 hours before that piece came out. Her interview aired on 9 News right the day before.
Well, let's talk about the Sun piece a little bit. What grabbed you about it?
I think what grabbed me about it was the staff members telling the Sun that they asked for help to keep her safe and to keep themselves safe, and they were told to shut up or resign.
Yeah. I mean, basically, that's what the reporting said was you don't say anything or you can. I think they gave him a day to decide.
That's
or
horrific.
Something.
Like that's traumatic. That's and there was the one staffer who told the Sun that it's one thing to struggle with mental health challenges and it's another to weaponize them.
Yes.
And I thought that was a really interesting verb choice, and I thought that it really encapsulated what you saw in that article. Right. Everybody knows that Yadira Caraveo has been very open about some mental health challenges that she has had. And I think people are very understanding of that. Obviously, everybody wishes her well. You also understand that's going to have impacts on people, and some of those can't be avoided. But what you read in that Sun piece is all these staffers telling the Sun that there were ways to mitigate the harm that was done to others, and it didn't happen.
It just kept happening. And I know I think there was she had high staff turnover to begin with. So It was interesting to me. They were able to find multiple folks to corroborate this information, that it wasn't just like a one-time incident or just like, I don't know, a bad moment or something for her. It sounds like it was pretty ongoing.
Yeah, I think, and at some point, she'll need to answer to it, right? She didn't want to answer to it to the Sun. She sent them a boilerplate statement. Certainly, if the Sun piece had been out when I sat down with her, then I would have talked with her about it. We did not get deeply into her mental health challenges beyond the fact that I did ask her, when Coloradans evaluate her one term in Congress, were there any decisions that she made that she thinks should be attributed to her mental health challenges?
Well, let's play that, because I do want to talk about it, because like you said, you asked her, but this was before this whole story came out. So let's hear a clip from your conversation with Yadira.
So you spoke openly about some of your mental health challenges while you were in Congress, to the point that you checked yourself in for inpatient treatment at Walter Reed. Not that being a pediatrician, your main job is like an easy thing to do, but why would you subject yourself to all of the nastiness, all of the long hours of going back to Congress when it took such a toll on your health the first time?
It's really, my health has probably not been at its optimum for 20 years or so. And it's something that Congress, with that extra pressure, probably uncovered. But it also gave me the advantage of being able to go to places like Walter Reed, Johns Hopkins, and get incredible medical care that every single person should really be entitled to. So I think it's more of a testament that I've had this lifelong, and that Congress gave me the opportunity to understand it in a different way. And I want to go back to make sure, just like with the fact that I'm speaking about it so publicly, that people out there know that there's help, that they should get help, and that they can get better.
Knowing what you know now, what did you think about that response?
Well, again, these issues had kind of been simmering under the surface, but there's a big difference between I've heard something from somebody or I've heard something secondhand, and I, as a journalist, I'm going to confront you publicly as a public official about it. So I do think now the question for the former Congresswoman is, what would you do differently to protect the people around you from trauma and what could be characterized as abuse if you go back to Congress? My question was about, why is she going to subject herself to what sent her to the darkest time in her life? But now that so many people have gone on with the Sun to express what happened, now I think the question is really about other people.
Yeah, it really does change. It kind of just shifts the perspective a little bit of like, understandably, you were asking her based on what we knew. You can't ask her about things that we just heard on the internet, which I have to be honest with you, we saw some things too. But like, if that wasn't reported, I understand why you didn't want to. But what do you think? Do you feel like there was something that she was trying to say or something that she was not trying to say in that response?
Well, I mean, she clearly was not trying to say what the Sun reported, which is that her staffers begged for a safety plan and that they were told to shut up or resign. Like, she was clearly not saying that. But the follow-up question that I asked her was whether she did anything in Congress that she regretted that she would attribute to her mental health, right? Because this is somebody who made some pretty inexplicable policy decisions. And, I want to be delicate about the way that I asked this, but I do think it's fair for people to know, like, were you really voting your values, or were you just in a dark place and making decisions that don't align with who you are? And it's tough stuff, right? Because somebody else's mental health is not our business. But if they're a public official, it could influence the way that they're handling public affairs. So that's a tough line. So I asked the question that I thought that I had. I can certainly understand people being like, well, you should have run this other thing to ground before that interview. But the fact is, my interview with her focused on a lot of really inexplicable policy decisions that she made.
When she was like, you asked her about voting against her own party, essentially.
Voting against her own values.
Yeah.
Voting against her own stated values. And the fact that she voted for a number of Republican bills that she says that she didn't believe in, that she believes would have been actively harmful if they became law, but she voted for them because she thinks her district liked it. I think that's really interesting. There's a lot to get into there. But I did ask that question of whether essentially she did or voted for anything because of her mental health challenges, and she said no. She talked about it only as a relational issue. And then the next day, the Sun piece lays bare the depths of this relational issue.
Yeah. So she announced a few weeks ago that she's running to win her seat back. I'm assuming that's why you've been trying to get her on the show.
Yep.
And she's running against Republican Gabe Evans, who she lost her seat to. There's already another Democrat in this race who's put up some really strong fundraising numbers. How do you see her strategy here?
That's a great question. Because now she's got to answer for this. She's got to answer for this in the same way that she has to answer for the fact that she went from being a progressive state legislator to a centrist in Congress who voted with Republicans on a bunch of messaging bills. And she also has to answer for the way that staff was treated. I'll tell you what, it does not look like she is going to have the kind of money that can overcome those questions with a shut up and get in line approach. Because face it, this is politics. You throw enough money at a problem, and it's not a problem anymore.
Yeah.
She's not going to have that kind of money. The national Dems are not piling in. So there's not going to be all this money to tell Democratic primary voters to just, don't believe your lying eyes and ears and just get in line and vote for her. She's going to have to address this stuff. She has a very well-funded Democratic primary opponent in State Rep Manny Rutnell. He doesn't have $1 million left, but he's raised $1 million and he's already started to spend it. So that's going to mean she's going to need to be in the arena answering this stuff. I think her calculation, it's probably a smart calculation, is that these swing districts are going to ebb and flow on national trends, right? It goes for Biden, she wins it. It goes for Trump, Gabe Evans wins it. If the midterms are bad for Trump, the Democrat in that district is going to stand a really good chance of winning. She wants to be that person to get her seat back. I think her challenge is the Democratic primary and what happens next and how she explains both her votes and her actions to Democrats.
I also thought you pointed this out too, her lack of endorsements.
There's none.
There's none.
There's none.
I mean, not that she can say why there was none, but will you remind me why that was the case according to her?
She gave me a bumper sticker line about how I'm running for the people, not for the endorsements. Okay, yeah, but for real though, why are none of the Democrats who worked with you in a very prominent role backing you right now? And you would think there would at least be a couple. And then she said, well, I haven't sought their endorsements. Well, that's telling, right? Because, whenever somebody tells me something, I always think this could be true or this could be false. And then how do you plan it out from there, right? So she says, I haven't sought the endorsements of these Democrats. Really? Why not?
Yeah, that's the
what
big question.
Do you think they will say? Or are you looking to stake out some kind of maverick image to the point that you don't even want to be associated with other Democrats? I'm sorry. That to me feels like a tough sell in a Democratic primary in Colorado, where I so repudiate the Democratic Party that I don't even want a Democratic endorsement. Or she would like to have their endorsements, and they don't want to touch her candidacy with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah. Again, it's already interesting because this race is until 2026, but she has a challenger in the Democratic primary, like you said, who's well-funded.
Yep. And I think it'll be really interesting to see if there are some endorsements that start to sort out in that race. I'm sure there are going to be a lot of prominent Democrats that just say, I don't want to get involved in the primary. I don't want to get involved. I would say the fact that she was a sitting member of Congress who is again running for the same seat, the fact that those endorsements are not there, I think is telling. It's not just another Democratic primary. She is a quasi-incumbent, even though she's not in Congress.
Yeah. Well, let's listen to another follow-up question that we from you to get a little back into this son story.
So as folks evaluate your performance during your first term, knowing that you've been open about your mental health challenges during the first term, are there things that you wish that you had done or handled differently that you attribute to your health that you'd ask voters to take into consideration?
I think certainly it affects depression and other mental health issues affect your ability to relate to others, right? Despite that, I know from my constituents and many of the groups that I work with that they appreciated that I'm an active listener, that I talk to everybody. I don't close myself off from conversations that maybe we don't agree on. I think that will only be better now that I've gotten treatment. But certainly there are moments where the darkness and the depression really overwhelms you, and it affects how you relate to other people, including staff members, friends, family. I know it put pressure on everybody that I was in contact with.
How are you feeling these days?
I'm feeling much better. Yes,
good to hear.
Very good.
So let's juxtapose this with what the Sun uncovered and her former aides allege that Caraveo twice appeared to attempt suicide, sent concerning messages to aides, and made them feel so uncomfortable that they put together a safety plan that suggested sharp objects be removed from her office. Kyle, when you spoke to her, did you have any sense of that this could be underneath all that?
No, I mean, I knew that there had been huge staff turmoil.
Yeah.
And I knew that she had been accused of mistreating staff, which this is not an excuse. But if we were to name all of the political leaders accused of mistreating staff,
I thought about this
that'd
a
be a
lot.
long episode. So the question is, now that we know what the Sun has reported, and I hear her say that, if I had been sitting there with a piece, my next question would have been, so you said it impacts your agreements and disagreements with people. Tell me about that disagreement that one time where your staff wanted a safety plan to remove the sharp objects and protect them from trauma, and you disagreed.
Right. I mean, that's truly like, it's just so interesting because from the conversation with you, we're hearing this. Obviously, she's a politician. She's going to do a spin or be vague about things like mental health is tough to dig into. But I feel the struggle for me was like this mental health conversation with her felt like she was trying to be honest. And now we just know so much more.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is like anything else. There's how she feels about it, and there's
Right.
how other people feel about it, right? She says that she's doing better than she was. I believe her. I'm happy for her. That's great. That's also great for anybody who comes in contact with her, because
Sure.
it sounds like that it wasn't great before. But at the same time, you know, the fact that she, like many Americans, struggles with her mental health, the goal is to have those people be happy and healthy and safe, not to hand them a seat in Congress. Those are two separate conversations. And I know that this is delicate, but I think that every journalist who's covering this race has to remember that those are two separate things. I do think that the follow-up question that you just played, I did try to at least draw a line between mental health challenges and policy decisions. Because if we start to get into a realm where it's like, well, these policy decisions were impacted by mental health, at that point, then it's a shield of immunity over everything that she did in her time in Congress. But she declined to take that. She said that that's not the case.
What I thought was interesting too was this. I would assume she would have known maybe that this Sun story was coming. I wonder why she didn't take this opportunity with you to get in ahead of that story.
Oh, if she had tried to use me like that, I would have been mad as hell. I mean, I don't know what I would have been able to do about it in the moment, because all I would have known is what I had heard through the grapevine like other people. But no, I mean, if she had tried to use that interview to preempt a negative story coming out, which certainly, like, I've seen people try to do, but that's a pretty devious thing to do. She didn't try to do that. She did not try to do that. But no, I mean, I would have been hot about that. That's not cool. She's there to have a conversation with the audience who watches my show, and I expect folks to come in and be respectful to them.
Why do you see that as devious?
To try and preempt a negative story in an interview with somebody who is not familiar with the details of it, that's devious.
I'm just thinking about political strategy.
Oh, know? Sure. No, a ton of it is devious. I would just say, again, she did not try to do that.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Not everyone is careful with your personal information, which might explain why there's a victim of identity theft every 5 seconds in the U.S. Fortunately, there's LifeLock. LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats to your identity. If your identity is stolen, a U.S.-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year by visiting lifelock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
So I want to ask you about part of the Sun story about the reporting process itself. Apparently, the reporter, Jesse Paul, was working on this story before the election last year. Then when they sent questions about one particular incident, Caraveo's lawyers responded with a cease and desist, and the story did not come out prior to the election. Does this change how you saw that race play out at all?
Oh, that's a good question. No, I think that race, I think CD8 rises and falls on national trends, and Biden won it by 4 and change. She won it really narrowly that same year. Trump won it by, I think, 1.8, and Gabe Evans won it by 0.7. I think that just ebbs and flows on the national stuff. I don't necessarily think that story, especially because if I have the timeline correct, it would have come out toward the end of early voting. So it would have been before Election Day, but after a lot of Coloradans had already voted. So no, I don't see that story necessarily materially changing that race. Now, if it had come out months before that, perhaps.
Sure, there was time for folks to learn about it. So one piece of this story that is kind of new is this level of openness about mental health. Because, I mean, this is a serious topic, but in the last couple of years, it's been something that politicians are willing to talk about, which I have to say is it's not surprising, but it's pretty new. Um, it was seen as such a weakness for so long. And I wonder what you think about the way she's discussing her mental health challenges as she runs to get her seat back.
Oh, that's a really tough question. I also think in a way, it's unfair to put the topic on her shoulders because, right, of the 400 plus members of the House of Representatives, she's not the only one dealing with serious mental health issues. She might be the most candid about it. So I think it's unfair to saddle her with the weight of the entire conversation. I think the more narrowly focused we get, the better, which is simply like any health challenge that somebody would have. How does it affect your ability to do the job that people send you there to do, right? If somebody was recovering from cancer or a really bad car accident, you would ask the same questions, right? Are you healthy? Are you feeling good? But then, are you able to do the job? Like, can you do the job? And the aspect here is, are other people okay to be around you while you're doing this job? And to me, the question that I asked her in the interview was, it appeared that Congress was the pressure cooker that really set off long simmering issues or brought those to the fore. Why do you want to go back into that?
Yeah.
You're out now. You can do something else. I mean, she's a pediatrician, right? I mean, you know, she's got lots of options in life. She can go into policy. She can go back into medicine. Why go back into Congress and subject yourself to this? And now that we've seen the Sun piece, my next question is, and why subject other people to your behavior?
Well, and I wonder who's going to work in that office after that.
Well, again, not to excuse it, I will just say this is politics where a lot of people are treated really shabbily by the people in power. And there's just a churn among political staffers. I mean, you know, they unionized in Colorado a couple of years ago at the Capitol, and they said, we're not going to put up with this anymore. And you know what started to happen? Some legislators have been run out of there.
Yeah.
Because you can't treat people like that anymore. So I do think that we're living in a good time in the sense that more and more political staff members are willing to say, I don't care how powerful you are, I don't care how important you think you are, you must treat people with decency.
No, and I think that's a fair point because like you said, these things, not this exact situation, but there are plenty of instances probably that folks can say, I had this experience with this legislator or any high stress job, really. So I do think that's a good point to not just put it all on this story or her experience, but say, we've seen politicians come out and say, I'm an alcoholic. We've had politicians come out, like talk very openly. So it's good to show that it's not just this one person, this one story. It's not isolated.
Absolutely. It's just tough though, right? Because everybody who's considering this, whether you're a journalist or you're a voter, right, you do have to separate it into the two piles, which is wanting the best for the person involved in their health, but then also understanding the ripple impacts that it has on other people around them. And I don't know how many people are interested in thinking that deeply about politics. Nobody is required to think that deeply about politics, but for the folks that are interested in it, really spend some time thinking about, the person and wanting the best for the person, and then also trying to mitigate the negative impacts to other people who we should acknowledge do not have the same resources as the person at the center of the storm.
Absolutely. I also think you're getting to this, but we're journalists. Of course, we're going to dig into this story and be like, oh my gosh, we think about the politics and everything that's happening in the Capitol and maybe what she was around. But what does this matter to a voter? Like, how do you think that this might impact someone who's actually in this district?
I still think that this is a policy and it's a values conversation for voters in that district. I think that this will play a role, but I think that there's going to be a huge gulf on policy between Yadira Caraveo and Manny Rutinel in that primary. And there may be more people getting into that primary. And then there will be a huge gulf between the Democratic nominee and Gabe Evans. This, to me, at the end of the day, and I could be totally wrong, in terms of like percentage impact on people's votes, feels like a high single digit, low double digit percentage of things. Not that it's unimportant, but given the vast ideological differences, I think that's where the focus is going to be. And I think that Yadira Caraveo, kind of uniquely in the politicians that I've covered in almost 20 years in Colorado, is in a really interesting spot where she acknowledges that she does not vote her values. She votes what she perceives to be the district's values. And that's led to some pretty interesting choices.
which again, we'll link to your interview because you really dig into that with her. But you're kind of getting at this big question, which is this Democratic primary is not until June of next year.
That's right away. Are you kidding me? That's gonna be so soon. It's right around. Yeah.
Do you think she can win?
Well, I think anybody can win. I mean, look at American politics. You know how many people look like complete ignoramuses because they said that somebody can't win? Anybody can win. Anybody can win. And I think most importantly is to remember that anybody who wins that Democratic primary has probably got a pretty good shot in the midterms. Not that Gabe Evans can't win. He could totally win. He's an incumbent member of Congress. But it's shaping up like it might be a tough row to hoe for Republicans and Trump in 26. So this is really an opportunity for Democratic primary voters to decide, who's the best shot, what kind of representation do we want, and as a political reporter, I like it when people have clear choices. I think that's great. I get frustrated when everybody herds together in a race and it becomes like a personality contest, or it becomes a who can throw the biggest pile of cash at things. Like, I love clear ideological lines, which now
who's got the best story of where you grew up. That's my favorite.
Your parents went through struggle. That's great. Congratulations. Those kind of things that politicians like to say. I mean, this is not what we came here to discuss, but like the Colorado Republican Party for the last 5 years has had very clear ideological differences in all their primaries, which I think has been awesome because it allows their voters to pick what they want. I think Democrats are going to have a really clear ideological choice in this primary, and I think that's what this will come down to.
That's really going to be what weighs in on this.
I think so.
Also, who knows what the world will look like in June of 2026?
Right?
Things feel like they're changing so fast. I wonder. I mean, this is a long time from now. So we'll see. Well, Kyle Clark, this was so lovely. Thank you so much.
Always happy to chat with you.
We reached out to Jesse Paul of the Colorado Sun to discuss his reporting, and he declined. Also, we need your help. We're working on an episode full of survival tips for the recession that may or may not be coming, and we want to hear from you. Do you have any cheap eats or a frugal Denver life hack? Text or leave us a voicemail at 720-500-5418. And finally, huge thanks to all the new members that joined during our spring membership campaign over the last couple of weeks. Thanks to you, we not only hit our goal, we flew right past it. So thank you so much to Elizabeth M., Lena H., Isabel C., Anthony B., Haley B., Adam B., Chris G., Jackie M., Patricia W., Denon M., hey Denon, Phil S., Katie O., Elizabeth N., Lorez M., Sarah P., Ashley B., Elizabeth T., Natalie H., Darren F., Kristen D., Aaron B., Lindsay S., Allison F., Allie L., Wendy B., and Sarah L. Thank you all so much. That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed the show, why not take a minute to tell a congressional aide about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to our morning newsletter and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. See you later.
Get Grandpa Harry's jacket on the socials.
It's really good.
Thank you.
I like it. It's vintage? It's your grandpa's?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It's Elmira, Horseheads, New York.
Oh.
The style setter.
Yeah, that was a dude.